Hello and welcome to another episode of Leaders of Transformation. We are in a series on conscious capitalism, and we have with us here today a conscious capitalist. Safwan Shah is actually a quick shout out to Paul Edwards before I forget. He's the one who introduced me to Safwan. He actually, I think, had him on his show, and he just said, "Oh, he's amazing. You want to have him on the Leaders of Transformation. He's certainly creating transformation in the world." And so thank you, Paul. But Safwan is the founding CEO of PayActiv, and he's going to talk about what PayActiv does and how they help people that are living paycheck to paycheck, creating a new way of operating for people to get paid. He is an engineer, a NASA rocket science educator, and an entrepreneur, and he's very passionate about transforming lives of millions of people by the people specifically, like we said, that are living paycheck to paycheck. We just had a really quick chat, and he has such a heart and passion for conscious capitalism. So I know this conversation is going to be super, super valuable. So Safwan, welcome to the Leaders of Transformation.
Well, thank you so much, Nicole. Thank you.
Well, so I gave them a quick, for our listeners, and of course we appreciate our listeners, and you're here because you want to learn how to be a leader of transformation. We're here because we want to, I love sharing stories of people that are creating transformation in the world so that you can be educated, but that you can also be inspired to be the leader of transformation that you are capable of being. And I do believe, and I said this in the last conversation with Bobby Herrera, I said, that I believe that every single person is capable of being a world changer. And even if that is just you change the world one person at a time, starting with us. And then the people, of course, that we come in contact with, the people that we work with, the people that we serve, and that we live with, of course. And so it starts with us. And so I hope that this will give you some inspiration and around that. So, but let's dive in. So Safwan, tell us a little bit more about the backstory. How did you get involved in business, going from engineering, get involved in business, and why is this idea of conscious capitalism so important to you in particular?
Thank you. So I am embarrassed to admit this, but I've never really had a proper job in my entire life. And
most great entrepreneurs, that's the case, right?
It embarrasses me for some reason, because when people come to me in a workplace, and I've been doing this for 30 years or 25 years at least, and they say to me, my resume has this, and we're testing people whether they've done this before or not, or experience. I always say, but I didn't have any experience, but I did this. So who am I to judge anybody else? So it's that kind of a thinking. But going back to your question, when I got I went to school in Boulder, Colorado for my master's and Ph.D. And when I graduated, in some ways, I was an educated derelict. I was looking for a job, but because when you do a Ph.D., you kind of get that 3-4 year gap with your contemporaries who've actually gone on and started working. And the PhD is another one of those things which is not transactional, it's transformative. So when you enter the doorway, which takes you into a PhD program, you may think you know everything. And when you come out of that door on the other side 3, 4, 5 years later, the one thing you know is that you don't know anything. So that is that transformation that a doctorate or a philosophy doctorate causes. So by the time I graduated, I obviously didn't know anything. And suddenly it was the 90s, and I came to Silicon Valley because that's where every engineer came. And I kind of I got some chances to, work and all that, but nothing really which worked for me. And one thing led to another, and I became that individual which the friends would always say that he's around, he's available. So everyone has ideas in Silicon Valley, but along with the ideas, they have jobs. So they don't want to, jump completely out of their job and do something. It's scary, right? So I was the guy that some of my friends said that you don't do anything that is, important or So why don't we help you start? So there were many people around me who kind of pushed me in this direction. And at that point, I had nothing to lose. I was an educated derelict, as I said. And this started me on this trajectory. And from that on, for almost 15 years, I did nothing but start, partially succeed. I've never failed. I don't think anyone ever fails. They partially succeed because there's always a lesson, which is success.
I love that.
Because I had great learning experience, and then one fine morning, in 10 years ago, I had achieved everything that I had set out to do, and I retired. And I said, I'll never work again. And it was a beautiful thing. And until a week passed, and 2 weeks passed, a year passed, 2 years passed. And that is when PayActiv was born. And it's almost like a second life. It's almost like, but why didn't I do it every single day? And I didn't even know. I changed, perhaps. I mean, I'd like to think that I was the same, and the way I saw the world changed. Something happened. And from a life of golf and Starbucks conversations came this whole idea of PayActiv. And so if you really, the question was that how did it start? It started like that. And then PayActiv was born somewhere around 9-10 years ago.
Wow.
And I started a company on this idea. And as we go along, I'll go into the details.
Well, it's fascinating because I love people's stories and how they got to where they are. And it's fascinating because no story is the same. No journey is the same for anyone. And to get to that point in your life where you've accomplished everything. And, a lot of times people will, and I know at one point I did, when I was young, it's like one day I'm just going to get to this point and it's all going to be done. And then I can travel and I can maybe not play golf, because I was never into that, but I would do whatever it is, that I would play the rest of my life. And the reality is that we're actually, I believe that we're all entrepreneurs at heart, and entrepreneurs are creators. And so we have this creative desire, to create something. And so to sit around and do nothing is not something that is ultimately going to create any fun and true happiness and fulfillment for us. And so, invariably, that's not going to last long, right? It's like, how much golf and Starbucks can you do? And especially if you're an intelligent person and you're passionate, then you're going to find something to do. But PayActiv, so it's a unique model in terms of how you're disrupting an industry. And so talk about what PayActiv is, how it works, who it serves.
So if you look at, and it's very easy to understand, I always say to entrepreneurs, when do you know your idea is good? Because over the years, I've also become a bit of a, invited faculty at universities, and I'll talk about entrepreneurship or innovation. So a good test of that is that if it's a good idea, if you can explain it to your, mother or your grandmother, somebody who's not going to take your words without understanding them and will not hesitate to ask you questions. That's why a mother, come on, it doesn't make sense to me. Many people, you can just say things and they'll sort of not understand but move on. And if it's understood by people and it makes a heart connection with them, then any investor in this world will invest in you, because that idea can be understood in a simple way. Because things that work are understood. That's the whole. So to me, during this period where I was looking for something to get out of that sort of ennui, the boredom, and start something, I was looking for something that would make me leap out of bed. And I said, instead of looking at technology and trends, let me look at the human condition. Because at the end of the day, everything boils down to, does it add value to the life of a person? So that change in thinking was profound. So instead of looking at, is AI going to work? smart cars are coming, is, a new type of advertising engine. Instead of thinking of that, you start thinking of what is there in this world that needs, there's a gap, there's maybe a blind spot. And I started reading since 2009 onwards, you may remember, The Sky is Falling. Wall Street has done this, or lower income people are living paycheck to paycheck. That's when this trend started in a big way. People were left sort of in a financial ruin in many cases. And more people studied, and one number kept coming out that 90 million people live paycheck to paycheck. X million people do not have $400 in an emergency. And I'm sitting there and thinking that how is it that the richest country in the world has a third world in its belly? Like, what happened? And I'm saying, what is the problem here? Because everybody seems to be quite wealthy and rich. Are there all kinds of narratives were shaped in those 7, 8 years. So to me, I went deep into this and I said, if 90 million people or 80 million people in America are living paycheck to paycheck, does that mean literally 60, 70% of our workforce? You remember, America is 300 odd million people. 150 million people go to job. They are the employables. So you're saying 60% are living paycheck to paycheck? Is that bizarre or what? And what is the reason? I mean, there's lending, there's credit cards, there's all kind of wonderful things, the greatest, most modern civilized society made by mankind. It turned out that millions of people in America, while waiting to get paid in that 2-week cycle, are paying enormous amount of money to late fees, overdraft fees, high interest credit cards, if they get credit. Many don't. And then there are products that are emergency products that many people use, like payday loans. And then the legacy products, like a pawn shop where you trade your watch or something for cash. And then there are title loans where you give your motorbike or car, against that title you get some. So I said, how much is that money? Like, this is America, right? How much is that? Turned out that people are paying 170 to 200 billion dollars a year in fees for these things.
Wow.
This epiphany, this realization was profound. I mean, I said, but why isn't anyone doing anything about it? Everyone's trying to figure out a new lending product. Like, is there a way, like, what are we supposed to do when people are in this terrible, and I started remembering my days in the university where I didn't have money. And the problem was never how much I earned. The problem was when I got the money. So if I knew that pay was coming in on Friday, on Tuesday, I'll write a check to Safeway and get my groceries, because I knew that on Friday, in those days, checks would be cleared 2 days later. I know I'm sure people have done that. And those kinds of things. So this realization, Nicole, was very profound. So I said, if 90 million people are paying $200 billion a year in fees, and I said not everyone is paying it, so it's like whatever. So how much of it is what? Like, how much is overdrafts in the country? Turns out that was $35 billion.
Wow.
$30 billion. Many of the listeners who are hearing this, some may resonate because they may have paid an overdraft fee on their back. Late fees that we pay to the various providers, the Comcast, etc. Turns out that those late fees are about $10 to $15 billion a year. Car title loans, on, and payday loans are about $6 billion. So this money that people are paying in fees, why are they paying it? Like, are they foolish? Are they just bad planners? Turns out it's a timing issue. They're living paycheck to paycheck. Now, how they got there, that's not for me to argue. That is a debate people should be paid a minimum wage or living wage. That debate is not an engineer's cup of tea. The second debate is that how much is taxes, less, more, subsidies. That is also a policy and political discussion. I can't change their wages. I can't change the tax structures. So I said, but there is one variable that nobody has talked about, and that is when you are paid. the timing of pay. And
Yeah.
who has control over that? Turns out employer controls it. And it is when that timing gets misaligned, that is when the worker goes to a bank and says, I wrote a check, I didn't have money, and I got hit by an overdraft. That is when you walk into a payday lender and say, I need 250 because you're 4 days away from paycheck and you don't have the money. That is when it happens. And the lives of lower income people are very volatile, right? Because they don't have credit. You and I, many people can just put an unexpected expense on a credit card. They don't have that. So it's a tightrope life. So this $200 that they lose every month, because there are 100 million people roughly, 200 billion, that's $2,000 per person per year, roughly 200 a month. On a meager salary of 3,000, 2,500, 3,500 a month, $200 is 7 to 10%.
Yeah, it's a lot.
So I said, let's make a company. Let's go to employers, and went to employers and said, hey, you're a large factory. You have 80% of your employees are shift or hourly workers. What if you gave us the time data of your employees? We let them take half of those hours as money from us as PayActiv. And on the day of payroll, you make us whole. But I will not go direct to your employee. You have to offer it to your company as a benefit.
So you pay the employees, and then you get paid back by the employer.
So in 2013, we went live in the first location in near New Jersey, and it was a factory in Trenton. And those employees looked at us and they said, we go out and borrow money all the time. If we had access to it, it will make a big difference. And one thing led to another. And today there are about 1,000 companies, more than 1,000 companies. And Walmart uses us for earned wage. Now it's called earned wage access. There's if you go to earnedwageaccess.com, you come to my company, and it's become an industry. So, but it didn't start that way. So talk about transformation.
Yes.
It's at many levels. So when people say that talk transformation, they need to understand what does it really mean. I understand it as follows, and this is classic, the great books on leadership by, I think, Burns or somebody, the greatest book on leadership. He talks about it. There are two types of leaders, transactional and transformational. And you choose wisely. You can be a leader in both cases. So transformative leader is a good leader, right? Because transformative leader does not really know that they'll get anything in return or not. The return could be a smile, could be a change in the work culture, could be in wonderful children. I don't know, whatever. So the first transformation was my own transformation. So you can't transform anything until you transform yourself. Just like the famous saying by Gandhi, if you want to change the world, why don't you be the change yourself first? So it's that kind of a thing. So for me, that 10-year ago period was very transformative because it gave me the time to think. And the big distinction I made is that one thing I won't chase, and that is passion. I'll chase a purpose. That little twist meant, like, passion could be I love football, I love basketball, I love golf. But purpose is perpetual. It burns all the time, every second of the day.
Mm.
That by itself changes. Like, I can be passionate about music, but my purpose in life is to improve the human condition.
Yes.
So even through music, I will improve human condition. So you see so that was the big first step. And the second step after that was, so the analogy I drew is, and I actually said this the folks at Conscious Capitalism invited me at an event last year, and I was really thinking hard on how to describe the state of mind at that moment and the analogy I drew is that, at some point in your life, I felt that way, that it's like, imagine a printer like a Canon or HP printer through which you print, your diagrams, your documents. Imagine a printer which works very well, has a lot of ink, but has run out of paper. The moment you put paper in it, all those beautiful words will come out. So one has to ask themselves that in their life, are they missing the printer or the ink or the paper?
Great analogy. Yes.
So for me, the discovery was it was paper. I had a lot of ink. I was young enough. The printer was working, the hands, the limbs, the mind, the heart, everything was functioning. So what I was missing, that paper on which I could put those words and that purpose that I had discovered. So sounds like, but that's how I solved my riddle.
Yeah.
And I had already since achieved some of those initial goals in life. Like, again, the way I describe it is that, if you have an iPhone or something, it has you type something, it auto-completes it, right? And many people sign off with, please excuse my spellings or typos and things like that. And there comes a point in your journey in life, it could happen in your 30s, in your 40s, sometimes never. That point where you say that there is no autocomplete left. I have fulfilled the wishes of all those people who set standards for me. So for me, if it was, get educated, work hard, be honest, have the decency to be a productive member of society, have enough money to be financially independent, if all those things are done, then what's left?
Yeah.
I mean, somebody asked, what's left? I don't know what's left. The human condition is left.
Mm-hmm.
For all those people, all eyes should go to one thing. There are 7.5 billion people in the world. So then comes the question of capitalism. Capital got us where we are today. The great inventions, and it is capital which will help this too. So whatever problems that, a surgeon's knife and an assassin's bullet or knife, it's the same knife, right?
Yes. It's either a tool or it's a weapon. Either way, you get to choose how you use it.
There's nothing wrong. So I kind of started thinking, so that's my journey into conscious capitalism, was also because I came to this realization that entrepreneurship, ingenuity, never say die, persistence, hope is necessary. And human need to pursue opportunity is ingrained in us. Whether you're in Bangladesh or in, the Amazon jungle, that life form drives towards survival of some sort. All that's missing is opportunity.
Mm.
And opportunity is part inside and part the environment. So inside is taken care of. We all have the desire. It's the outside so we have to so that's how I thought that capitalism, and it's got an ism at its end, so it's kind of bad, but capital and free market opportunity, if truly free and truly fair, is amazing.
Yes.
But
it's the questions. You ask different questions.
I asked totally different questions. I started by saying, why is there a third world in the belly of America?
Yes.
Every American's responsibility. Do not abdicate yourself from the responsibility.
Yes. Somebody should do something. I hear that a lot. Somebody should do something about that.
I feel that I'm responsible and I'm doing something about it. Whether it is Mississippi or Ohio, I've been across the country. I live and breathe the life of the people we serve. I don't say because we serve. We are there to serve them.
Yes.
Because if we can solve their day-to-day little problem without gouging and exploiting and monetizing the lower income worker.
Yes.
That is the only way it will work. And I'm not saying anybody else, whatever they're doing to me, that's irrelevant. My company, makes sure that every 12, 14, $15 an hour worker has the access to the money that they've already earned, because they are the ones giving a loan to their employer.
Yes.
Because you pay your landlord in advance, you pay your vendors upon delivery, your customers pay you immediately. You don't get coffee by saying, oh, 30 days later, Starbucks, 30 days later, I'll come and pay you. You got your latte, now better pay for your latte. But what about the person behind the counter? Why do they wait 2 weeks to get paid when their mother needs medicine or their child needs something? And whether they just need their own money, it's their money. Pay
Yes.
them their wages.
Yeah.
So I wanted to say it in this way because who decided this?
Yeah.
Right? Who decided?
Well, and the questions that when you were asking yourself that question, you're asking yourself different questions of what most people say. Why aren't people asking this question? Why are people noticing, doing something about this? And you realize that a lot of, and there's no judgment here, there's observation, being aware, and we are all part of it, right? This is humanity, we're all one. So, they're asking the question is, how can I capitalize on that? How can I open up a payday because it's a lucrative business? Or how can I find more ways or open up some kind of lending,
because there's
product.
An opportunity, there's demand.
Because there's an opportunity and there's demand and there's need, rather than asking what you're asking is like, why is this happening in the first place? And when you said about humanity, the human condition, and really focusing on that, it changes everything.
You hit the nail on the head, Nicole. It's the assumption you make. It's the beginning point.
Yeah.
Because if the assumption was, I want to do the coolest technology trend, right, as an entrepreneur, or I want to go and take the franchise of the most profitable current brand.
Yes.
So you will succeed. There is nothing wrong with that.
Yes.
That's what the assumption you made. But if the assumption you made as a leader that I want to lead, or I feel that I can lead, and I want to do something which improves this world, it changes everything. It will improve my condition for sure.
Yes.
But I will do only those things that improve humanity. That changes everything.
Well, and I think even in that, there's a lot of times people are looking for the opportunity of late, looking for the opportunity in being a quote unquote difference maker. I want to be an influencer. I want to be a thought leader. Everybody's got these titles. And the fascinating thing is that when I speak to true thought leaders, they don't have the goal of being a thought leader. They don't actually have the goal of being a quote unquote influencer. They want to change the world. They want to improve, life for someone, right? Improve the quality of life for someone. And in doing that and in asking different questions, people start to ask, how'd you do that? Why are you doing that? Wow. And they start becoming a thought leader. They don't actually set the goal to be the thought leader. And so, that's why there's a lot of this going on right now. And I love having people like you talk about this, because we can talk about the how-tos on conscious capitalism. We're a conscious capitalist, company, right? A conscious company. What does that actually mean? And is it a driving force, or is it a strategy, or very different, to it? And what I hear from you, it's like this, it's like the heart and soul of like what you started with.
So you again, I'm really, I appreciate you teasing it almost out of me. I really had this. So when I was first invited to Conscious Capitalism, it was about 2-3 years ago. And the co-founder, Raj Sisodia, met me in San Francisco, and amazing man. I met this guy for the first time, and he looks at me and talks to me for a few minutes and says, you know what, if we invite you to come to Austin, Texas in our CEO summit, will you do that? And I kind of, said, yeah, sure. What do you do? And I knew his book. But I said, what do you do over there? So, well, we have 300 CEOs. They come there and all that. And I said, okay. A few months passed, 10 months passed. I suddenly an email comes that now it's October and you have 6 weeks and you have to turn up over there and you're going to speak. I said, you're going to ask me to speak? Yeah. So I'm saying, am I a capitalist? What is, like, first of all, I love the book, I love the idea, but I hadn't embraced like your question. So I go there and amazing people are there. I mean, the CEO of Chobani spoke, amazing character. I mean, he is larger than life people. And John Mackey, the founder of Conscious Capitalism, and all kinds of amazing people in the room. And I said that, what am I supposed to say to these people? Like, give them a business presentation? What should I talk about? They gave me 20 minutes. I decided to do something completely wacky. I went there without any idea of what I'm going to say. And didn't use a single slide. And I just said, I'll tell them what I do. And I'll tell them my journey. And that video is on the internet. If you search for keynote by Safwan Shah, it's somewhere there on YouTube. And 20 minutes later, when I ended, I didn't know what I was going to say. And, I defied every rule, everything about this, about speaking. And came back and I was a different person because of the way they came to me after that and thanked me and said, we had never thought about this, that we are powerful leaders, that there are millions of people who we employ. Nobody had told us that August is a 31-day month with 10 weekend days. So or let's say 8 weekend days. So it's a 23 workday month or 22 workday month. And September has 5 weekend days and 1 Labor Day holiday. So it's an 18, 19 workday month. For an hourly worker, that's a 10% difference in salary. The rent was not 10% less.
Yeah.
So if you think about it, nobody has sat there. If only you recognize or agree that this is the problem I'm trying to solve, then you'll start looking at the life of that person. So it was gratifying. So that's how I got engaged into this conscious capitalism thing. I don't even think of capitalism as conscious. I think capital will solve this problem.
Yes.
There is no other way. And this led me, like 2 years later, now my belief is, and again, I think deeply about this and feel deeply about this. And whether we've succeeded or not, there are enough companies now who are trying to either do what we do or improve upon it or imitate it, that it's just gratifying. I have finally, so I started with there's a third world in the belly of America. Now my new thinking is, and I'm open for debate and discussion and argument, that America should not be seen as 50 states. America should be seen as 5 million businesses.
Interesting. Yeah.
There was a time when the governments were rich and the people were poor, or not, like governments were rich. Now we live in an era where governments are not as rich as they used to be. And it's businesses. There are 4 or 5 $1 trillion or more businesses in America. Apple being 1.3 trillion, and Microsoft and Amazon and Google and Facebook just at the flirting with the $1 trillion mark. Never in history has that happened. The largest $1 trillion company ever was called East India Company, which owned India and America. And they were the Brits. That was the Queen. So who is thinking about these things? How do we take these 5 million businesses of America and empower them? By transformative leaders.
Yes.
Consciousness, by human condition. That's my case. I don't rest it. I'm debating it with people.
Well, I love it. And it's just, never really thought about it. But this is where when you step back and you look at something And rather than just seeing what is that you challenge that, not to challenge the status quo for the sake of challenging the status quo and being a thought leader, but just stopping and being with it and noticing. It's like stop and smell the roses. We've heard that, but it's literally stopping and smelling the roses. And I love what you said earlier is I don't look at trends. I looked at the human condition. I didn't look at what was and what is AI going to be big or not, but you looked at and observed and stepped back. I remember actually, quick story. I remember a client of mine who was struggling in her business. She had very successful business, but it was just not, there was a lot of turnover. There was a lot of chaos. And so she hired me to come in, and they were in on the East Coast. And so I go there and I said, well, you have 3 locations. And so we're going to talk, of course, with her. I was talking with her, but, and some of her leaders, but I wanted to go see their locations, right? So here's a very smart businesswoman. She has one of the top franchises in the company, and it's a large franchise. She's very smart. She knows business. We go into that first location, which is her largest location. She goes to say hello to people and do the things that she needs to do. She says, I'll be back in a moment. I said, sure. So I sit down in the waiting room, in the lobby, and I sit there and I just observe and I start looking. Just started looking around. And then she comes back and I said, you want to have a seat with me just for a second? Just sit for a second. So she goes, okay. So she stops. So she stops and she sits beside me. I said, just look around. What do you see? Where's our sign? I said, that's a really good question. It's part of the brand. There's this huge front desk. Consumers coming in, customers coming. There's no sign. There's a broken window. There's clutter and product all over the place, all sorts of messiness. And she's like, what about this? And what about this? And what about this? And what about this? I didn't have to say any of it. I just had her stop and look. And what I hear and what you're saying is sometimes we just need to stop being on the treadmill and rushing and keeping up and copycatting, and stop and actually ask the questions and get into association, get into environments like listening and thinking with people that think differently, that stop and are observing what's actually going on rather than just continuing with the same old, same old.
Yeah, to me also, this is a fantastic story. To me also, there was this, when you're in Silicon Valley, everybody is smarter than you. And unless you're original or you have originality, you have no chance. You can either be a parasitic copycat and, a Me Too product, or you can be original. Because there are only, enough few products that are original. Then everyone else embellishes upon it. So to me, that was also a driver that I don't want to do something which is, copying a trend. Then really what you're battling over is, can I execute better than others? Or I have more money, or who's backing me and all that. But if you have a truly unique idea, it's almost like that. I don't know if you ever read that very simple book of Paul Coelho called The Alchemist, in which the guy says, that, do you know this? There's some law of something that the world will conspire to help you. Just decide first of all. Once you decide and you have a purpose, the world will conspire to help you. I feel that way. It has been the most gratifying and amazing journey, which has just begun. But everyone has been so kind to us, and businesses in America are amazing. And how they've adopted and embraced our service, made it their own. Because it works.
Because it works, and it's simple. And your mother can understand it, your grandmother can understand it, and everybody else can understand it. That's beautiful. Thank you so very much, Safwan. For our listeners, I encourage you to go to payactiv.com and discover, if you haven't heard of this concept, please go and check out what they're doing. If you have a company that you can institute it, that you can help your people. But I also encourage you to get a copy of his book. It's called It's About Time. And we'll make sure that the links are in the show notes that you can get access to that. He's also featured in The Healing Organization, which is another book. Of course, the talk that you did at Safwan for Conscious Capitalism, that's of course Google, we can get a link for that in the show notes, but it's also, you can Google it. There's also the film, It's About Time, that's out there. We'll make sure all of these links are in the show notes. For you that are listening or watching, I highly encourage you to just stop the rat race, stop the copycat, parasitic type of, it's a really strong word, but you know what? It's true. It's like building on something else that's already in existence, but just stop and check in and look at the human condition and what is needed and what shows up for you and what can you do to make a greater impact. That's, to me, that's what a leader of transformation does. It's not necessarily the word leadership that is the operative word here in this podcast, in the community that we're building. It is transformation. And it's the leaders who are the people that are leading that transformation that we love to showcase. And certainly Safwan is a great testament to that. So, and thank you for being here and sharing your heart and your passion today. I just so appreciate it. I could listen to you all day.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. And I'm a big believer that leaders of transformation take action. So whether it is ordering his book, whether it's going and checking this out and seeing how you can apply this, do something today with what you heard. If there's a little spark, or maybe it is go sit in Starbucks, little plug for Starbucks, go sit in Starbucks and just stop for a moment and just look around and maybe do a little people watching, maybe a little observation of what's going on around you, and just notice and experience the human condition from that observer standpoint and see what comes up. But I really do believe that there's value in taking action now, rather than you fall back into the same rut, the same habits, the same actions that you continue to do. You do the same thing over and over again. And one day, I'll take care of it. One day I'll do something about that. One day I'll go change the world. And it starts today by the questions that we ask, by what we observe. And so I encourage you that. We'd love to hear your stories. You can go on leadersoftransformation.com, share with us through the contact page. You can also find us, of course, on social media. We'd love to hear what you're up to, how you're making an impact in the world, also how you're planning to make an impact in the world, and how we can support you along that journey. So we'd love to hear from you. We appreciate you being here. And if you like this episode, please share it with your friends, so we can be, that they can be inspired as well, and that you can help spread this message of transformation around the world. So we appreciate you. We thank you. And we look forward to seeing you in the next episode of Leaders of Transformation real soon.